It's Faith and Sport Time on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network, 1270 AM Charlotte. We're also streaming at carolinacatholicradio.org and on the Carolina Catholic Radio app. We're also a co-production of Radio Maria. So welcome back to all of our Radio Maria listeners tuned in on the Radio Maria Network. I'm Chris, the producer of the show, and in studio with me, the host of Faith and Sport each week, the one, the only, the man of the hour, Dr. John Acquaviva.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. However, wherever you are listening, Dr. John Acquaviva. I do the exercise physiology thing at Wingate University Monday through Friday, but one day a week I come down here to the studio. Me and Chris, we do a little show called Faith and Sport.
That's right, in a room full of fans, as you can hear.
I think they're more energetic than always. You know what? This shows the power of caffeine, brother.
That's
the
right.
Power of caffeine. Folks, here's what we're going to do today. We want to thank you for joining us here on Carolina Catholic Radio, as well as Radio Maria. We're going to discuss all things sports, including our hit and miss with Carlos Herrera. He's going to be on in 1 minute. We're going to do weekend headlines. We have two guests today in the second half of the hour, just for a couple minutes each. Author Jeff Ballister, and then Hank Chardos, the director of Birthright of Columbia. And they're going to talk about different things, but they're both friends of the show. And I am so happy that they can make some time out to join us. And then at the end, we're going to do the quick Q&A with Dr. A. A couple things to announce before Carlos comes on, and that is I want to let all the men listeners, especially, Chris is going to be there, I'm going to be there, Ed's going to be there, Ed Billick, our periodic co-host, at the men's conference for the Diocese of Charlotte. That's going to be March 20th, so we could actually say, Chris, at this point, it's later on this month.
That's right.
And I want to give special thanks to Jason Murphy. He has a show here on Carolina Catholic Radio,
right.
But he is also the coordinator of the whole conference. God bless him for doing that. It's a great service to the church. It's a great service to the diocese. He's going to join us 2 weeks from today to talk about the men's conference and a little bit what to expect. So please, folks, if you're not considering it. If you're considering it, please go. Carolina Catholic Radio is going to be there. I'll be there with co-host Ed Billick. Chris will be there, and we'll be doing a live show for at least an hour from the men's conference at St. Thomas Aquinas here in the diocese. So all kinds of stuff to look forward to. Chris, big news, brother. 1 week from today, baby number 5 is due. So wow. I know. See these eyes. You can actually see the white of my eyes. Yeah. In about a week from now, you won't see any white in the eyes. It'll be all red.
Yeah.
I'll be malnourished. I'll be
bags under your eyes.
Oh yeah. I'll be. But it's all in preparation for this little monkey. It's a little boy. It's supposed to be due a week from today. So I'm looking forward to that.
The next addition to the Acquaviva lacrosse team.
Well, actually, at this point, this will be number 5, so we could actually field legitimately a full-court basketball team. So I'm looking forward to that. In fact, our guest, Jeff Ballister, he'd appreciate that, being a big basketball guy. Speaking of Jeff Ballister, he is the author of the book, God Doesn't Play a Zone Defense. I mentioned he's going to be joining us in the second half of our show. But also, I want to mention this because Jeff has graciously and generously become our sponsor. So please check out this book, God Doesn't Play a Zone Defense. GodDoesn'tPlayAZoneDefense.com is where you can check out him, a video of him talking about the book. You can purchase the book and consider it as not just a stocking stuffer, but an Easter basket stuffer. I don't know if I said that right, but you guys get the idea. Anyway, I want to give thanks to Jeff, and he's going to join us in 1 minute. Or he's going to join us in the second half of our show. But joining us in 1 minute, in fact, joining us right now is the periodic. In fact, he joins us just about each and every week. He is a certified soccer coach in Northern Virginia area. He's a former youth director at his church in Northern Virginia. And here he is to join us again to do the hit and miss and talk about all things sports. Carlos Herrera. Carlos, welcome to the show, buddy.
Lolitos! Dr. Acquaviva, glad to be back. Thanks for having me.
Oh, this is great, buddy. Listen, each and every week, I love having you on the show. I love doing the show, but I have to admit, my excitement, my energy level was just slightly higher than it normally is because there are so many great things to talk about in the world of ethics, in the world of morality, in the world of character when it comes to sport. And as always, we'll do a hit and miss to start. And as usual, why don't you start us off? Do you have a hit or miss for us this week?
John, I think you're also excited this particular week because this is the last week where you'll probably be able to sleep, right?
I can't tell you, brother, how well I have been sleeping. It's ridiculous, but you know how it is. You have a little Maxie, and anybody who has a kid, it's a great thing. No, it's not a great thing to give up. I said that wrong. It's you're giving it up for a great thing. That's really what I want to say.
Absolutely. No, we're excited to the addition to your family, and we'll have to have Mac down there to play with and meet all his friends,
absolutely,
all your kids.
Absolutely. All right, brother.
Right, so my hit of the week actually has a lot to do with something that popped up in my Facebook feed. It's something that's been going around on Facebook and being reshared. And it was something that happened in 2013 after I did a little bit of research. It is the story of Ivan Fernandez Ania, who's a Spaniard marathon runner, I think more specifically cross-country. Uh-huh. And he was in a race in 2013 where a Kenyan, Abel Mutai, who was an Olympic medalist in 2012, got disoriented towards the end of the race, about 100 yards from the finish line, stopped running, and because the race was in Spain, people were trying to tell him to keep going, he's not finished. And Ivan, who was in second place, came up upon him, and instead of passing him and going to the win, he actually stopped, ushered him forward, tried to explain to him, and with hand gestures, get him to go forward because the race wasn't done. And he basically showed him where the finish line was and came in second, as he would have if Abel Mutai, the Kenyan runner, had known where the finish line was, because the Kenyan was ahead of him by quite a bit. And so he got a lot of press and publicity for, and it's interesting how the various papers and articles were like, Spaniard loses on purpose, Spaniard fails to win,
interesting.
Spaniard, loses, with all this intent, right?
Yeah.
And it really is an example of when he was interviewed, he was like, he basically said, I didn't let him win, he was going to win. And this is what Ivan said later. The race was his. And one reporter said, but you could have won. And he said, but what would be the merit of my victory? What would be the honor of this medal? What would my mother think of it, of all things? And he's famous now for this, and he's been going around on Facebook lately, and there have been articles now in 2020 that are coming out about this regarding sportsmanship.
I love it.
John?
I love it. Folks, you're listening to Faith in Sport. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. Joining us just about each and every week for the first few minutes of our show is Carlos Herrera. We're talking about his hit or miss in the world of sport, and his hit has to do with a marathon race that took place actually 8 years ago now, and in which the runner that was coming in second place had a chance to win because the guy that was in first place was going the wrong direction, and the last 100 yards redirected him toward the finish line, and the guy that was in second place stayed in second place, and the guy that was leading ended up winning the race. Carlos, do you have any idea why this is being retweeted and reposted on social media 8 years after it happened? Was it just simply because it was such a rare gesture of sportsmanship?
I think it's exactly that. I think it's a rare gesture of sportsmanship. There have been actually, in the research I was doing, there have been several articles in different places. One was Ethics, a Fading Trend, and they cite the story. Yeah. Another one's When the Runner-Up Won the Race of Integrity, is another published. So, and where I got the story was from InspireMore.com, talking about sportsmanship. And I think this is a rare thing because it's such a highlighted race. He could easily have won and justified it, but he didn't. And he helped this guy to win, and who rightly would have won. But it's so rare that somebody kind of thinks of somebody else other than their own medal acquisition strategy.
Absolutely. And Carlos, maybe we can end on this point. These marathons, unlike 30, 40 years ago, there are big bucks if you win first place. And I think in some cases there's virtually no money. Maybe you get a medal and a T-shirt for second place. But I know the New York City Marathon, the Boston Marathon, pays the winner over $1 million. Do you have any idea how much he sidestepped to allow this Kenyan runner to win?
I don't. I think that's a great question, and I don't. Some of these races in some of these countries aren't necessarily full of money. They're more of to get you, qualifying for the bigger races. So who knows if there was any money to that? But that's a good question.
Oh, yeah. Let's look that up. Maybe we can deliver that a little later. Maybe we can get Chris on that, because isn't that, Carlos, what real good producers do? So very good, Carlos. I think that's excellent. And I'll end it on this. That wasn't, as you mentioned, his responsibility, but it was a pure act of kindness. Because if he went the wrong way, that runner, it is not the responsibility of anybody in second, or maybe it's the runners or the people that organize the race, but I certainly don't think it's the responsibility of the runners. He just went above and beyond what he was asked to do, and that is give his effort, and he put effort and time toward making sure this guy saw exactly where the finish line was, and God bless him. And further, he knew that he was outrun. In other words, he was probably trying to catch that guy for the past 26.1 miles and knew he couldn't do it. And he just said, that guy deserves to win. I'm not going to allow him to lose or come in second place on a little, misstep, literally, figuratively, and literally in the race. So good for him. His name again, Carlos, the name of that runner.
His name is Ivan Fernandez Anya, and he's got Facebook friends. Immediately after the race, he had like 500 people, want to be friends with him. He's got thousands of followers now, and he's become some sort of a hero because of this.
Absolutely. Very good. Good job, Ivan. Congrats to you, and God will bless you, brother, if he hasn't already. Carlos, mine is a miss, and it has to do with women's volleyball, beach volleyball in particular. And this is a true recent story. In fact, about a week ago, somehow it took this took place over a period of literally just a couple days. There is a 4-star World Tour event, and this is tandem volleyball, like two girls against two other girls, and it's pretty popular throughout the world. And it's taken place in Qatar, a Middle Eastern country, and they, out of, quote, respect for our culture and tradition of our country, they were asking the girls not to wear the traditional two-piece bikini. And these are quite revealing. If anybody's ever seen beach volleyball, the girls leave nothing to the imagination. These bathing suits are really small, and Qatar, being like so many Middle Eastern countries, has regulations and even has rules and laws that state there must be some form of modesty, especially by the women, right? And so what happened was, when they announced that there was going to be a dress code of basically T-shirts and shorts that went to the knees, two Germans in particular, Carla Borger and Julia Sude, said over the weekend that they would skip the event because of this bikini ban. Now, this is problematic for a couple reasons, and this is a miss in particular for a couple reasons. We don't have time to mention all the reasons that this is a miss, but first and foremost, what I think of is, okay, I understand that, especially on sand, and in fact, of any form of sport, that if you put a T-shirt and regular shorts that go down to your knees, you're not going to have as much flexibility. You're not going to have as much ease of movement as if you would had different type of clothing on, in particular, in this case, these two-piece small bikinis. But if everybody is wearing that same thing, it is not a disadvantage. Now, if it was a disadvantage, if it was like a rule for just one country, like let's say any Middle Eastern tandem squad that came had to wear the T-shirt and the long shorts, then I would say, yeah, that's a clear disadvantage, right? But this is for everybody, and I didn't quite understand why they were going to ban, or why were they going to skip in a form of protest this particular fairly big event. The other thing is, I always find it strange, and this is kind of a theme of our show, and certainly a theme of the talk shows, conservative talk shows, and conservative TV shows, and so forth. But I find it strange and dangerous policy to be accepting of all other points of view until they're offensive to us or we simply disagree. This clearly, Carlos, could not offend those beach volleyball players. They just stood up and said, this is our work uniform. We should be allowed to wear it. What are your first thoughts?
My first thoughts are, if they wanted to not play, just two players, I'd be like, okay, fine, don't go. Don't attend.
Exactly.
That's fine. You don't want to attend. However, this is probably, and I'm trying to find out, if this is the only sort of women's volleyball event in a Middle Eastern country that's conservatively Middle Eastern, right?
Yep.
However, it's real interesting. The teams and the International Volleyball Association sort of talked to the Qatar Association. The men's beach volleyball has been happening there, I believe it's for 7 years. Or 4 years, and the women's, this is the first time that they will play there, right? So It's a big deal, right?
Yeah, it is.
But in the counter to that, the Qatar local hotel, swimming pool, some private beaches, you're allowed to wear bikinis, or there's no rule against wearing bikinis. So it has come across as somewhat contradictory in what Qatar wants. Obviously, they're trying to make, I think, a political stand for their own culture. And, two women were able to make a big change here to kind of assuade them from doing that, which is rather interesting. And I feel like, everybody talks about tolerating particularly countries that have or cultures that have more conservative values when they're not in the mainstream, i.e. like Muslims or Hindus, and it's very in vogue now to defer to them and their cultures, right? And here is a case where two women are saying, no, we're not going to defer to their culture. We just object to wearing the clothing that's different.
That's right. Folks, you're listening to Faith and Sport here on Carolina Catholic Radio. It's a co-production of Radio Maria. Carlos Herrera and I are talking about our hit or miss of the week, and my miss is this stance that these German beach volleyball players are making. In fact, they decided not to go to a tournament in Qatar, a Middle Eastern country, because the Qatar event organizers said that it was against their tradition and basically the morals of the country. But by the way, Carlos, and I don't think I mentioned up until this point, I think it was over the weekend, maybe just this morning, they lifted that ban, so they're going to allow it. So it'll be interesting to see whether these Germans actually change their mind and do go. But I want to share one more quote, and maybe this will get us further down the conversation. But if nothing else, I want to share this. And I find this really interesting as well. And again, it could take another half hour to sift through all this. But Nicholas Hildebrand, the director of the German Volleyball Federation, referring to the national coach for the German women's team, quote, said, "She told me that she won't go to Qatar because she doesn't feel respected there as a woman." And again, this is maybe kind of isolated from what's going on, but in lieu of this story, and this is just one of the sentences in this whole story, and I've read just over the last couple of minutes some of what was stated. It rings disingenuous, at least to a certain degree. In fact, the interesting thing, and Carlos, you and I would both say, is they're trying to protect the dignity and respect of women by asking them not to wear bikinis. Couldn't that be argued, Carlos?
I think we could easily go up on both sides of this, right? Like, I would feel that the feminists would feel like it's unfair to dictate what a woman should wear, right? By any means, right? And then there are the people that are, I think, more conservative and acknowledge the fact that wearing something that is so revealing, if you will, could be a temptation to others. I think that there's a group of people that would fall on that side, right? And I think as Catholics who try to live in a moral way, we want to minimize what is temptation to other people. But that can easily be seen as outdated and in some ways chauvinistic or male-oriented, right?
That's right, yeah.
So I think you'll find people on both sides. I think that the change is that the Volleyball Association also found that Qatar had in 2019 had the World Athletics Championships in track and field, and in track and field they wear a very revealing clothes
outfit
because there's less clothes. And in 2006, 2019, Qatar also had the ANOC World Beach Volleyball Games, where the players were allowed to wear bikinis. So I think this is like somebody drew a line for some reason in Qatar, and then the reason they changed it so readily is because there was proof that they weren't that they sort of singled this event out for some reason.
Yeah, that is interesting. And I didn't quite get, until we got in this conversation, the contradictory kind of messages that Qatar is sending out there. And because of that, this whole case, right, it's tougher to defend it. And actually, you and I'm not defending it or challenging it in any way, but we're just bringing this to light because there are a few things to talk about, because this is our show, right? We're talking about ethics and character and morality and so forth. And modesty is part of this conversation. And there's certainly something to be said about modesty in uniform when it comes to sport. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. But
and you, to your point, and we talked about this before the show, there's that football league, indoor football league. I don't know if it's just in Las Vegas, where they literally have women playing football in bikini bottoms and crop tops and shoulder pads, I believe, right, with helmets on.
Yep.
And that's deemed sport. And depending on which side of the fence you're on, you could say that that's demeaning of women, or you could say that's liberating of women.
That's right.
But it would be a topic that we would discuss. Is that good? Is that, ethical? Is that good for your moral perspective? Are they doing that just to lure men in to make money off it? There's so many angles that we could easily take on any of these subjects.
Absolutely.
Which is why we do them.
Absolutely. Folks, you're listening to Faith in Sport, where we apply our faith to all aspects of sports. So whether you're a referee, a coach, whether you are a player, whether you are a administrator of sport, this is the show for you, because it's a regular sports show, but we just try to weave in character, ethics, and morality as part of our conversation. Carlos, I want to move on before you have to go in a couple minutes, but I want to bring up something that happened. I thought this was really interesting, and it'll be a good reminder to you, me, and all our listeners when it comes to the Sunday obligation. A friend of mine 2 weeks ago was confirmed into the church, so thanks be to God on that. And he has been thinking about converting to the faith for years now. And 2 weeks ago, his local parish, the local priest, confirmed him. He received First Communion, and he was confirmed into the church. So he is a full member of the Catholic Church, and God bless him. And he, the week after, 2 weeks after, so just really recently, he went away to Florida to go on vacation with his friends, or vacation with his family, and he went to go visit a friend of their family. In fact, it was a friend of his wife's family. Anyway, he texted me, Carlos, and he said, John, regarding the obligation, he said, and it was almost like, to Alicia and I, my wife, we almost thought it was like a joke, right? But he's just, I think he's well catechized, but he's not perfectly catechized, I guess you could say. There's a whole lot that he's still going to learn about the faith. But he asked me, he said, I understand that there's an obligation to go to Mass. He said, is it lifted when you're on vacation? And like, I'm a little surprised that I didn't get a laugh out of you, and I tend to laugh at that too. But the fact is, there's a lot of practicing Catholics that think that that's when the moral obligation is lifted for Mass is, for instance, when you're on vacation, right? So anyway, I texted him and I said, no, I said, this is not a reason to miss Mass. And he wrote back and he said, yeah, my RCIA teacher never mentioned this. And I said, no, that in fact, this is an offense to the church. And I said, you are obligated to go. And we went back and forth a little bit, and he said something like, I'm glad I have a good friend in you to kind of direct me in these things. And he was being honest with this, right? And I said, gosh, this is interesting, because how many people actually think this? And this is a side note, Carlos, but a friend of Alicia's recently shared with her that her local priest, when she went to confession a few months ago, she confessed that she did not go to church when she had an opportunity when they were on vacation over this past summer. And the priest, I thought, was really controversial statement, said, that's fine. There's no problem with that. And of course, that priest is wrong, right? If you purposely miss Mass, if you can't get to Mass because of weather, the virus, whatever the case is, that's a separate issue. But I thought that he was errant in saying that. In fact, that's kind of bothersome that, like, if he were to say, listen, I don't find that big of a deal, but I will accept that as one of your sins and absolve you from that. But he didn't do that. And I thought that was kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a little,
disingenuous.
Well, it's
maybe?
not just disingenuous. It's a little scandalous, right?
Yeah.
A priest shouldn't be saying that to somebody.
Well, it's interesting, and I think I would chuckle if I didn't feel like this is not uncommon,
right.
in the church. And
yeah.
I think when it comes to catechizing and when it comes to kind of understanding what the church teaches, which is one of the reasons we have this show, is to and we use the letters of the church, we use the scripture, we use the catechism, which
right.
is incredibly helpful, but it's important to teach what the church really teaches versus kind of what has been adapted and changed and kind of socially accepted, right? So, for example, right, your comment, well, I'll tell you, when I was a youth minister, there were, I felt like I was in the middle of the road, and there were decisions that I would make where there's a liberal side of the church, and that would anger the liberal side of the church, and I'm talking about just people, right?
Yeah.
And
yep.
maybe even teachers or instructors, right? And then there was the conservative side. So I think this is one of these, the clear teaching of the church is that we have an obligation to go to church on Sunday. If you're on vacation, you still have that obligation. If you choose not to go, that's on you, and that's something that you have to, understand that you're not going. Now, if there's no church close by, that's a different story.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So, but if there's a church, 5 blocks away, and you just decide I'm on vacation, and so vacation means, I'm vacating even my commitment to the church and what I committed to. Well, that's different, and that would deem to sin. Now, whether it's a serious sin, I think different priests would argue with you, but it's a mortal sin.
It's a mortal sin too. I mean, the church defines it as a mortal sin
to miss mass as an obligation.
Yeah, I agree that the distance, like let's say you travel really far, you're in a foreign country, and it's a couple hours away. I think that's when it starts to become an arguable point. But you're right, when it's relatively closer, even within an hour, I think the faithful have an obligation. And this comes from the Catholic Catechism, as you referred. 1389 says, just one sentence, the church obliges the faithful to take part in the divine liturgy on Sundays and feast days. And there's that word, obliges. And I'll end it with this. And this is something that we talked about a couple months ago. I don't remember if it was you and I or me and Ed were talking about this, but the Pope recently said sports on Sundays are okay, except when it's used to skip Mass. And that's directly from the Pope. And I thought that was beautifully said. Like, right, it can... if you have sports on Sundays and the family's involved in that and it breaks up the family, like the dad goes with the son to the baseball game or the mom goes with the daughter to the softball game, it kind of breaks up the family. That's an arguable point. But either way, the Pope says you don't use it as an excuse to skip Mass. So we'll end that part of the conversation on those points. My brother, Carlos Herrera, thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time, buddy.
Thanks for clarifying that, and look forward to being on the show next week.
Lolitos. All right, folks, here's what we're going to do. We're going to have a couple guests coming up after the hour. It's Hank Chardos, the director and founder of Birthright in Columbia, and then we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk to the gentleman who is the author of the book, God Doesn't Play His Own Defense, who happens to be the sponsor of this show. So stay tuned for that right after the break. But first, let's do Weekend Headlines, Chris.
Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of sport, the thrill of victory, and the agony of defeat. The human drama of athletic competition.
It's Weekend Headlines with Dr. John Acquaviva on faith and sport.
Here we go, folks. In the PGA, South African Brandon Grace wins the Puerto Rico Open with an impressive eagle birdie finish. Next up on the tour is the WGC Mexico Championship. In NASCAR, 23-year-old William Byron took the flag in the Dixie Vodka 400. The Pennzoil 400 is next on the slate. Chris, I do find it interesting.
Don't forget, presented by Jiffy Lube.
That's right. In fact, that was just too much. We didn't have time for that. But actually, I do find it interesting that they ran out any of the tobacco sponsors, but all this alcohol stuff, that can creep right into the sponsorship.
That's fine.
Yeah, exactly. The Pennzoil 400, by the way, will be in Las Vegas next week. In NCAA men's basketball, we're down to one unbeaten team, and that's Gonzaga. Number 2 Baylor got stomped by Kansas this past weekend. And this week's big game, clearly, is between new number 2 U of M, University of Michigan, and now number 4 Illinois. So stay tuned on that one. Major League Baseball exhibition games began over the weekend, so spring training has officially begun. Let's give thanks to the Lord for that. Yeah. The Tigers won their first exhibition game over the weekend. How did the Braves do?
They didn't win. They lost their first one to the Tampa Bay Rays.
But I'm sure they tried really hard.
Yeah.
Okay, folks. So there you have it. Sports headlines that may or may not change your life. Listen, stay tuned. After the break, we have joining us Hank Chardos, the founder and director of Birthright of Columbia. And then right after that, we're going to talk to the author of the book, God Doesn't Play His Own Defense. Stay tuned for that and more here on Faith in Sport. Chris, take it away to the break.
You are listening to Faith in Sport on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network, 1270 AM Charlotte. Also streaming at carolinacatholicradio.org and on the Carolina Catholic Radio app. We're also a co-production of Radio Maria, so stay tuned. All of our listeners on the Radio Maria Radio Network and the Carolina Catholic Radio Network. We've got more Faith in Sport coming up right after the break.
The Carolina Catholic 40 Days of Giving Lenten Pledge Drive is underway. We hope you enjoy the outstanding local programs and daily features by members of our Carolina Catholic community. Please consider making a pledge to donate today at carolinacatholicradio.org or our mobile app.
Hello, my friends. I'm Christopher Check, president of Catholic Answers, and we're excited to work alongside Carolina Catholic Radio Network. We all know that Catholic radio is a great help to Catholics who desire a deeper understanding of their faith, but here is something you might not know. Many, many non-Catholics are brought into the church because of Catholic radio. That makes the Carolinas, where only 1 in 10 Christians is a Catholic, real mission territory. Let's get to work. Your listener-supported Carolina Catholic Radio Network is delivering every day the fullness of the truth, and I am looking forward to being there in May to help them with their vital ministry. I hope to see you at one of the events we are planning. And if you'd like to set up a Catholic Answers event at your parish, send a note to feedback@carolinacatholicradio.org. That's feedback@carolinacatholicradio.org. See you in May.
Do you need to plan for retirement or protect your family's financial future, but you're not sure where to begin? Are you looking for a way to bring your faith and your finances together? If so, then look to the Knights of Columbus. As one of the largest and strongest life insurers in North America, the Knights offer a competitive and comprehensive suite of life insurance and retirement products, and it conducts its business in a uniquely Catholic way. Are you ready to do business with a company that puts faith first? If so, you can find your local Knights of Columbus agent by going to kfc.org/FAA.
Teachers that care, professors that care about you. Just an awesome experience all around.
There's peace here. There's encouragement here.
Faculty, everybody that works here, they really set you up for success.
I don't think I have ever felt as loved and as supported and as encouraged as I have at the Abbey.
There's something here that's underlying and intrinsic. There's like a spirit of love and community. And I think the spirit is God's presence here.
Belmont Abbey College, a world away, but close to home. Visit us at belmontabbeycollege.edu.
This is Jason Murphy with the Catholic Men's Conference of the Carolinas. Registration is now open for the 11th Annual Men's Conference on March 20th at St. Thomas Aquinas Catholic Church. Speakers include Bear Wozniak, Belmont Abbey College President Dr. Bill Thierfelder, Dr. John Acquaviva from Wingate University and host of Faith and Sport, and my own partner in crime on the Obligation Radio Show here on AM 1270, Business Life Coach John Eads. Mass will be offered by Bishop Peter Jugas and assisted by the seminarians of St. Joseph Seminary. Sign up today for live or virtual attendance correspondence at catholicmenofthecarolinas.org.
And we are back with more Faith in Sport on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network, 1270 AM Charlotte. We're also a co-production of Radio Maria, broadcasting across the Radio Maria radio network. So glad to have our Radio Maria listeners tuned in for more Faith in Sport today. Make sure you also can listen on CarolinaCatholicRadio.org and also the Carolina Catholic Radio app. I'm Chris, the producer of the show, and once again, the host of the show. You know him as Dr. John Acquaviva.
Folks, welcome back to the show. Oh, man, this has been a great show. I hope that you had a chance to hear the conversation between Carlos and I. We covered a couple really neat and interesting aspects of the faith. Some stuff had to do directly with the faith and not so much with the faith. But in case you're just joining us and you haven't heard, you didn't have a chance to hear that first part, is we're on virtually every day of the week. So
that's right.
So after it airs today, you can hear us again tomorrow, again the next day, again the next day after that. And all you have to do is go to CarolinaCatholicRadio.org, all one word.
That's right.
And you could see the, I think you have to hover over where it says programming or
That's right.
Yeah, and then you'll see everything laid out right in front of you. And so if you really want to, you can hear me around 7 or 8 days a week. So
that's right. If you can't get enough Faith in Sport 7 days a week on Carolina Catholic Radio, you can go to CarolinaCatholicRadio.org and hear more Faith in Sport on demand.
On demand. I don't even know what that means, but I always like to say that. It makes you sound really important. Listen, joining us in 1 minute, folks, is going to be Hank Chardos. He's the founder and the director of Birthright of Columbia. And then after we get off the phone with him, we're going to have just a brief conversation with him. We're going to talk to author and the sponsor of this show, Jeff Ballister, who wrote the book God Doesn't Play His Own Defense. And then we'll end the whole thing with maybe doing a quick Q&A with Dr. A, where Chris shoots me a question I may or may not know the answer to.
That's right.
Chris is, I have to admit, I am so excited. In fact, I'm looking forward to talking to Hank, because Hank's a big Villanova fan. And I want to say they're in the top 10 right now. And of course, they've won too many national championships to count. In fact, I want to say the last time Michigan was in the finals a couple years ago, darn Villanova beat my beloved Wolverines for the national title. So despite that, I'm going to bring Hank on and we'll try to have a good conversation. But I think NC State, your team, is actually going to go pretty far in the tournament. I just think they're tough.
Yeah.
And I think they're gonna do pretty well.
Yeah.
You're going to be proud of your
2 wins, one against Pittsburgh, and before that, the University of Virginia, and they're getting ready to take on Notre Dame on Wednesday night, so that's going to be a good game.
Oh, man, you can't pick on the Catholics. You have to maybe let the Catholics win on that one. Now, there's 120-plus Catholic schools. They're all fine. Villanova being one of them. In fact, speaking of Villanova, a Villanova fan, I think he is actually a alumni of Villanova. He's our next guest. He is Hank Chardos, and he is the founder of Birthright of Columbia. He's a fan of the show. He's been on this show before. We love his support for this show. I want to bring him on to talk a little bit about Birthright. Hank Chardos, welcome back to the show.
Hi, Dr. John. It's great to hear your voice, and I am an alumni of the class of 71. Go Wildcats.
There you go, brother. I hope somehow, some way, and this is no offense to our producer, Chris, but I hope somehow, some way, Michigan meets Villanova in the final game and we can avenge that. Do you remember that a couple years ago, that game?
I sure do. Is 2018.
Yeah.
And that we had 2016 and 2018. We got a great coach, and to me that coach expresses his faith, and the players absorb that. It's somewhat similar to what goes on here at Birthright. Birthright's a pro-life emergency pregnancy service.
Awesome.
Our efforts are to respond to those who either suspect that they're pregnant or know that they're pregnant, but usually don't have a birth father support. They don't have others who are willing to help. And so Birthright exists to assist them and their baby during pregnancy, so that there's an opportunity for them to not only get help but hope, but also to know that they are one of the most special individuals because they're a mom.
That's awesome. Now, Hank, you and your wife, Sally, you guys opened up this chapter in Columbia, South Carolina. And now there's over 250 locations that have the name Birthright, and the 250 locations are not just in America. This is an international organization, isn't it?
It is. It initially started in Toronto, Canada, by Louise Summerhill, a mom and a grandmother. But really, John, we do simple, ordinary things. Hello, this is Birthright. May I help you? Is the way the phone is answered, or we greet someone who comes in, and this now becomes and starts our process of allowing them to understand about the baby. And so, regardless of what their circumstances are, regardless of what kinds of difficulties they may have, we're going to sit, we're going to listen with our ears and with our heart, so that before she leaves, she knows that we want to help.
That's awesome. Brother, folks, we're talking to Hank Chardos. He is, along with his wife, Sally, opened up the South Carolina chapter of Birthright. And Hank is here to talk to us about what they do, how they help the local community, and so forth. You're listening to Carolina Catholic Radio. It's a co-production of Radio Maria. Hank, I heard recently, in fact, on these very airwaves, Carolina Catholic Radio, and they were mentioning, and I kind of caught it in between, I think it was just a brief segment, and they were talking about for every one abortion clinic, there are 5 adoption centers. And I know you guys aren't an adoption center, but in essence, you are an extension of that, and you are part of this kind of like fight against abortion, isn't it, right? It's just an alternative, and it's one of the things that you kind of put forward to the young ladies and the young men that walk into your office.
Yeah, absolutely, Dr. John. And we'll receive correspondence and letters from a husband and a wife who plea and ask perhaps someone who is contacting Birthright, we can connect. Well, ours is to offer that to a licensed adoption agency. And so that's so many of the different facets that are involved with these unplanned pregnancies. But the bottom line, if the listeners were to retain something from this conversation, it's the baby.
Yep.
And so now how can we, in different ways, we talk about prayer, we talk about baby booties, we're talking about ointment, we're talking about lotion, we're talking about being a volunteer, all of it because of the greatest gift that God has given us, which is the baby.
Yep.
But at this point, and it continues, that abortion is legal, and so what we want to be able to do is to allow an individual to know. Because, see, John, never in the 41 years that Sally and I have started the Birthright chapter here, never has a woman that we helped ever come back to say, I wish you would have talked me out of having the baby.
Absolutely.
It's to the contrary. They are going to go through difficult times. They are going to go through lots of challenges, but now they have Birthright. They have Hank, or maybe they have Terry, or maybe they have Anita, and now they can perhaps see from one day to the next how that help and hope is going to give us the greatest gift that God has given us, and that's the baby.
Absolutely. Brother, before you go, let's say there's a listener that says, I want to help Hank and Sally. I want to Hank Birthright of Columbia. What are ways that they can help?
At the top of the list, Dr. John, is prayer.
Yeah.
And I mean that in a very real way because we also convey that to the client. But aside from prayer, there's an opportunity to donate maternity clothes, baby clothes, health care items, making booties. That's one of the first gifts that we give to someone who has a positive test. Take a look at our website, birthrightofcolumbia.org, birthrightofcolumbia.org. And on the website, you can see that our efforts are to convey that message of hope. So thank you for this opportunity tremendously, Dr. John.
You got it, Hank Chardos. Brother, I want to ask our listeners to pray for your organization, to pray for your mission there at Birthright of Columbia. And thank you for all you've done for your community, brother. You've made this world better, and in particular, the area of Columbia. And thank you, brother, for coming on this show. And I hope when I ask you again to come on that you'll do that. And either way, let's talk soon, brother.
Yeah, I'll talk about a Villanova win over Michigan.
I knew you were going to say something like that. Get the last word in. Hank, my friend, I hope to see you soon. And thank you again for joining us, and have a good day, brother.
God bless you, Dr. John.
God bless you. There you go, folks. Hank Chardos, he is the executive director of Birthright of Columbia. Check them out at birthrightofcolumbia.org. And I love Hank because not only is he a fan of the show, he comes on whenever I ask him to, but it's worthwhile 5 or 10 minutes when I bring him on. And by the way, over the break, I had 5 weeks off between the fall semester and the spring semester because they didn't give us a spring break, so they just extended that break. And one of the things I did, Chris, is I drove down to Birthright just to have lunch with him. I wanted to see the facility, and I thought it was just a great way to spend the day, spend the afternoon. I got to see my friend Hank, and I got to see the actual space in which they help those people of Columbia. So, folks, again, through prayer, through financial donation, and through material donation, their hearts are going to be open to whatever you have to give them. Check them out at birthrightofcolumbia.org. Listen, folks, in 1 minute, we're going to shift gears, and we're going to have author Jeff Ballister on. He is the author of God Doesn't Play a Zone Defense. As I'm talking to him, please check out goddoesn'tplayazonedefense.com so you can see a picture of him. There's a video of him that you can watch later. You can hear why and see why he wrote this book. He's a great guest, and he's a great friend of the show. And, of course, as I mentioned, he's also the current sponsor of the show. So I want to bring him on. He's always got at least one good story for the book that he shares with us. Brother, listen, as we wait for Jeff to call in, I like what Hank said there. So maybe the next time we talk, it'll be Villanova against Michigan. But just to throw something your way, maybe Michigan will beat NC State in the Final Four to face Villanova, and that way everybody goes away happy. But no,
except me.
Yeah, well, to make it seriously. Ultimately, you'd be really happy. It's always that the tournament is the biggest heartbreaker because during the regular season, even during the conference tournament, you know that almost every team is going to live, especially the decent ones. They're going to live to see another day. But when the March tournament comes around, March Madness, it's done, and it always hurts. But if I think Hank would agree with this, if Villanova, Michigan, or NC State got in the Final Four, ultimately you'd have to be pretty happy about that. Wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would be.
I mean, it'd be ultimately a good year.
Yeah.
Folks, listen, if you're just joining us, this is Faith in Sport, where we look at sport through a Catholic lens. We try to talk about morality, ethics, and character building as part of our regular conversation. If you notice, it's a regular sports show, but we just like to integrate those things about virtue into our conversation. Is Jeff on the line yet?
Not
My man
yet.
hasn't called
I'm
yet?
wondering where he's at.
Okay,
hasn't called in yet.
Yeah, he'll probably call in any minute. There's something else I wanted to talk about, but let's do this. Why don't you shoot at me? Why don't we just cut to the quick Q&A with Dr. A, and then in fact, I think this is going to be really interesting conversation for you.
How familiar are you with NASCAR's variety of fines?
So I think this is interesting because I think it was last week, getting ready for the show, I was reading about the winner for the weekend headlines. I forgot what it was. What was last week? They were in Daytona, I think.
Daytona, yep.
Yeah,
for the road course.
That's right. And in preparing for that weekend headlines, I came across that somebody was fined $10,000 for loose lug nuts. So in preparation for the show, I found out that there's all these fines that occur.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Here's the amazing thing. Listen to this. This is last year's violations, or at least some of them, and these guys get fined big bucks.
Yeah.
Nemechek got fined last year $75,000. Reed Sorensen $75,000. Bubba Wallace $60,000. But the main reason they get fined is loose lug nuts.
Yeah.
And these are just some of the penalties. Do you have any idea what some of the other penalties are?
Yeah, there's a lot of them, like restarting at the end of the line for the ensuing restart, pitting before pit road is open, pitting out of order, restarting at the end of the line or drive-through penalty, car must enter pit road in single file, speeding while entering or exiting pit road, passing on pit road from the inside on entry, driving through more than 3 pit boxes to enter the pit stall, crew members over the wall too soon, use of extension poles are limited and not self-illuminated.
So here's the question, Chris. When you're a fan of NASCAR, did you watch this past weekend's race?
No, I didn't get to see it because I went out of town to Charleston for the weekend, so I missed the race.
Okay, so but you're a fan. You're a regular watcher of these races. When that happens, does the commentator mention that might have been an infraction of some sort?
Yeah.
Okay, so they'll say, "Oh, those guys came out a little too early," or.
Yep.
But here's maybe you know this.
Or the 48 car was penalized because it was too low.
Yeah.
To NASCAR's.
But here's my favorite one, Chris. Carl Long, this is a couple of years ago. In fact, he probably just had a moment in NASCAR. The engine was too big by 0.17 cubic inches too big.
Yeah.
But here's the thing is, don't they, I guess it's like anything. It's like a form of holding in football. You just hope you don't get caught, right?
Right.
But they have to have tape measures or rulers that measure the size of the engine. They have to know. And my guess is it's like, if they catch us, they catch us. Now, here's the thing, Chris. If they win the race with that too big of an engine, do they still get credit for winning the race? They just get fined, as far as you know?
I think so.
Okay.
I don't think they get disqualified from the race.
But what could disqualify them?
There's some penalties that can disqualify them, like if they put illegal parts on their car they're not supposed to have on their car to try to win the race.
But Chris, an engine that's too big sounds like it's blatant cheating, right? That would maybe that would count as maybe failing to win the race. So they could actually come in first. And that's happened before, right? You actually come in the race, and then afterwards they measure their engine. They see if... But
that's right, because they have inspections after the race. Post-race inspections is what they call it.
And, some of these pit stops, I want to say they're all less than 15 seconds long. And so it makes sense that you would have a loose lug nut.
Yeah, because have you seen how fast some of those pit guys are putting those lug nuts on and changing those tires?
That's right. In fact, they're just doing it so quickly, and that guy pulls away literally as they're putting that last lug nut in.
Right.
And that could be really dangerous because I want to say people have gotten hurt, maybe even killed from a loose tire coming off during the race, right?
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. Interesting. Yeah, and I guess it's like any other sport, right? Baseball players, football players, they all get fined after the fact. It's just, I had no idea. But I'm going to use this term from now on. If somebody can't get a topic or a concept I'm explaining, I go, "What do you have, loose lug nuts or what?"
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, it's a great little kind of comeback for somebody who can't get what you're saying. You have loose lug nuts.
Yeah.
But yeah, these guys. By the way, you know who is the biggest perpetrator of loose lug nuts? Denny Hamlin. I knew there was something about that guy. He walks around like he has loose lug nuts. Hey, is Jeff Ballister on the phone yet?
Not yet. I don't know where he's at. I'm waiting for him to call in so we can get him on here.
Yeah, I was really hoping to have him on.
Yeah.
Folks, thank you for joining us here on Faith in Sport. This is where we merge sport and virtue. And this is Carolina Catholic Radio, a co-production of Radio Maria. And we are so happy, even though it's been a few months, but I was so tickled when I called Radio Maria and asked them, "Hey, would you guys be willing to take on my show?" And they said, absolutely. They had open arms for our show, and we had actually, Ed and I had a show for an hour and a half, for about a year and a half on Radio Maria, and then we came over here to Carolina Catholic Radio when we started this EWTN affiliate. But all the Catholic radio stations, they kind of work with each other rather than are kind of separate. And that was one of the reasons that Radio Maria absorbed our show. So
yeah, I was excited when you called me and told me that Faith in Sport is going syndicated.
I know.
Nationally syndicated.
Not too many people could say that, brother. Yeah. We're on in Pennsylvania. We're on in Wisconsin. I think Texas. Louisiana, of course. That's where their headquarters are. It's all good stuff, brother.
Yeah.
I'm just tickled pink. Something else I wanted to mention. In fact, if we had time with Carlos, I was going to talk about this. But there's this equality law that was passed last week by Congress, and I think it goes up for vote this week in the Senate. And I think all indications are that this thing is going to pass. And listen to this, and it directly impacts sport. So this equality law is really big. It's one of those things that literally looks like, well, yeah, it's just equality for every person that's in our culture, every person that's in our society, but extends and it infringes upon several organizations, including all universities and especially Christian universities. And what got my attention to this was Stan Van Gundy. He's a former NBA coach, and he used to coach my beloved Detroit Pistons. Mm-hmm. And he recently said about this law, quote, "How can you not vote for the equality law?" And there was a lot of people in Congress that didn't vote for this, right? But here's why. If you do not, for instance, my school, Shepherd College, which is Shepherd University now, we used to have same-sex dorms, and we had what are called intervisitation rules. Mm-hmm. So during the weeknight, right, Monday through Thursday, no girls were allowed in a men's dorm after 10 o'clock at night. And then it went to like 1 o'clock in the morning, I think, on the weekend. But either way, there was intervisitation hours. And the president, you could call him old school, you could call him old-fashioned Christian, whatever you want. But the point of it was he was like trying to instill in his own little way. He was trying to instill in his own little way, hey, let's try to keep some wholesomeness to our campus here, right? Not let anything go. Right. Anyway, part of this equality law is any university or college that adheres to that same-sex dorm law, they might lose federal funding. Isn't that a shame?
Yeah.
Like, why would you put on any university anything other than what they want to project in their community?
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. The other thing is they'll lose federal funding if they don't allow transgender females to play and compete against other females, right? The transgender female, for those who have somehow missed this when Carlos and I talk about it just about every other week,
right?
It's when they're a guy, literally up until they're even in college, and then they transform themselves either through drugs or an operation to a female. And more states are now saying at the high school level in particular, you cannot compete against other girls. It's unfair.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And with this equality law is saying if you don't allow them, these transgender females, to compete against females, then they're going to lose possible federal funding as well. This is, man. And it might force Christian schools, for instance, to drop all language of faith. So, for instance, like if there is a Christian school and they are touting what the Bible says, they might lose funding or they might get fined by their local government. Oh, folks, listen, we only have a couple minutes left. My apology, because it was probably my issue. I may have gave the wrong phone number, or maybe there was an issue with the phone system. But Jeff Ballister, the author, and he's graciously and generously agreed to be the sponsor of the show. Jeff Ballister wrote the book, God Doesn't Play His Own Defense. We'll have him on again soon. And my apologies to you folks, because I promised that he'd be on the show. And my apologies to Jeff. Listen, let's end the show. As always, I like to do this quote by John Paul II, in which he said, "Give thanks to God for the gift of sport, in which the human person exercises his body, intellect, and will, recognizing these abilities as so many gifts of his Creator." Before we go, folks, I want to give special thanks to Carlos Herrera and the executive director of Birthright of Columbia, Hank Chardos, for joining me on the show today. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. Please join us next time here on Carolina Catholic Radio and Radio Maria for more Faith in Sport.
You've been listening to Faith and Sport on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network, 1270 AM Charlotte. Also, we're a co-production of Radio Maria. So thank you to all of our Radio Maria listeners tuned in across the Radio Maria Network. We invite you to tune in again next week for more Faith and Sport right here on 1270 AM Charlotte on Carolina Catholic Radio and Radio Maria. And if you can't get enough Faith and Sport, check out carolinacatholicradio.org and check out Faith and Sport on Demand. Until next time, have a great week, everyone, and a blessed one.